Alright, today we're going to be taking a look at two different long-range rifle scopes. One is the Leupold Mark V HD, and the other one is the Trijicon 10 mile. They're basically in the same class because they have real similar zoom, they come in at a real similar price point, they're real similar in weight. So let's take a look to help you make a better decision which one would be right for you. So let's go over the specifications. To the whiteboard of knowledge. So a 10 mile for up and down elevation adjustment, you have 100 total adjustment. The Leupold Mark V HD, you have 120. Now the cap on it limits you to 75-ish, I forget the exact amount, because this cap actually counts for you so you don't get lost in your turret, which is pretty damn nice. I really wish the Trijicon had that, because yes, this has a zero stop, but say I'm like one full revolution up, and I forget I'm a full revolution up, I can get lost in the turret and think I'm at my zero, but I'm actually 25 MOA up. The Leupold counts it for you. It starts off by pushing in the button, then the button's flush, that means you're one revolution up, and this little knob pops out, that means you're 2 revolutions up, and it just keeps track of it. Now the downside to the Leupold turrets is it has these stupid Allen wrenches to adjust it. So say you're setting your zero or something, you have to bring this little tiny Allen wrench to the gun range, and if you forget, you're screwed. Yes, if you only had to throw up elevation on it, or it's just a windage adjustment you had to do, that would be okay, but say I had to go down more than 1.25 MOA, I couldn't. And I actually ran into that problem at the range. First time I went and zeroed it, I could only dial down to where I had a 300-yard zero because I didn't have that little Allen wrench with me and I couldn't take off the cap and adjust it. Now for the Trijicon, they do it really nice. This turret's actually split in two. Let's see if I can hold this. So you take off this top screw right here, which is all done without tools. Then you pull your cap up and you reset it to where the zero is. That's easy. It's got a little gear in there. They lock together. It's nice. You don't have to worry about over-tightening an Allen screw or stripping an Allen screw out. Now when you set your zero stop, that is this plate right here, that does require an Allen screw, but you should only really be setting this once. So all your zeroing in that will be done with no tools. And the same thing with the windage, and because there is no zero stop on windage because you never know if the wind's going to be blowing from the left or right, you'll never need tools for your windage. Pretty freaking nice. Left and right adjustment, with the Trijicon you get 50 MOA, with the Leupold you get 60. And that comes down to the tube size. With the Trijicon, you have a 34 millimeter tube. That's the diameter right here. That's 34 millimeters. With the Leupold, you have a 35 millimeter. Now, both of these are above 30 millimeters, so trying to find rings for these are really tough because once you get in like 34, 35, stuff like that, it's really hard to find a set of rings. Now, the Leupold, I winded up just using their scope mount. I screwed up somewhere, or they sent me the wrong part, because when I ordered it, this was supposed to be a 20 MOA mount. It's 0 MOA, so I only got 20 in my rail, so I can't even use the full turret because I'm missing the other 20 MOA. The Trijicon, I did not go with their mount, because it was like how an ACOG is. Like, it's a 2-piece mount. I'm like, I just don't want that many variables. Eliminate that shit out, and I only want it to mount right here on the scope and right here on the rail. I don't want a third mount in the center. So I opted not to go with the Trijicon brand one. I actually went with a Vortec, and they actually screwed up too and sent me a 0 MOA mount, but their customer service was off the chain. I let them know what happened, and within 24 hours I had the proper mount at my door, and then they just gave me a shipping label for the old mount. Didn't cost me a penny, no headache, nothing like that. I called, they answered the phone. I wasn't sitting on hold for like hours. Really nice. So, got that taken care of. Alright, what do we got for overall length? The Trijicon is a shorter scope. Now, it looks really short compared to this one, Because I opted not to put the sunshade on it, otherwise it would have another few inches. But the sunshade just looked goofy on this gun, so I left the sunshade off. So for the Trijicon, we got an overall length of 14.33 inches. The Leopold, we got 15.7. And you can see the difference. It's pretty obvious. Alright, weight. The Trijicon, believe it or not, even though it's a shorter scope and it's got a smaller tube, this is actually a heavier scope. I was kind of surprised when I found that out. Like, I knew it was heavy when I pulled out of the box. I'm like, wow, this thing's kind of a tank. But then when I actually looked at the difference between these two, yeah, so the Trijicon weighs 36 ounces. The Leopold weighs 33. That's pretty crazy. I mean, we got a fatter tube. We got more zoom. We got more adjustment. We got basically more of everything. And it's still a lighter scope. Like, how the hell does that work out? Alright, so zoom. The Trijicon, it goes from 4.5 power all the way up to 30 power. The Leopold goes from 7 power up to 35 power. Now, I'll be honest with you, I haven't spent a whole lot of time on the range with the Trijicon yet. Like, I've just been outside. Like, I haven't actually, like, pulled the trigger on it because I just got this yesterday. But I don't really notice that extra 5 power on the top end. Now, on the low end, oh, it's way noticeable. So, that being said, yes, I would like the extra 5 power. I would like this to be a 35 power scope, but it's only a 30. We're going to deal with it, but I believe the package I put it on, I won't really need that extra 5 power. We'll see, though. I mean, we just got to wait and see how this all plays out. The clarity between the two scopes, to be totally honest, I can't tell the difference. I seriously can't. And I put it in a whole bunch of different situations, on different zooms, at different ranges. I don't see a difference in clarity. I tried to snap pictures at the same range with the same scope. Obviously, the Leopold's got a little bit more zoom, and it's got a fuller reticle, so it's going to look different. I don't see a difference. Now, the actual parallax adjustment on the Leopold, say I was aiming at that fence post in my picture. When I adjust the parallax, everything else blurs out, but the fence post stays in focus. With the Trijicon, when I adjust the parallax for that fence post, I was also getting shit in the background in focus. So I don't know if that's an advantage or a disadvantage to either one. But the Trijicon, the parallax seems a little bit more loose. Like it's bringing multiple things in focus at once. Where the Leopold, it was a single item. I don't know if that's an advantage or disadvantage. But yeah, I tried taking pictures of the reticle. Yeah, that's freaking impossible. I couldn't do it. Alright, so the outer objective is 56mm on both scopes. Not too bad at all. Something that the Leopold has a huge advantage over the Trijicon is the Leopold, you can get this in the Tremor 3 reticle. What that is a reticle that helps you guesstimate wind. Basically, you would go down, you'd be like, okay, so I gotta come up this amount of mils. You go to that mill line, and then it's got the dots in there for a 5 and 10 mile an hour wind, which is pretty freaking convenient. The Trijicon does not offer that reticle. No, I didn't go with that reticle anyway, because I'm completely calibrated in MOA. When it comes to shooting firearms, consistency and standardization goes a long freaking way. Because everything I do is in MOA, I can't get that reticle because they only make that in mils. If they made that reticle in MOA, yes, I would get it. I would have that reticle. I think that is a slick-ass reticle, and it's worth its weight in gold. However, it's in mils. And I don't want to, put down the profit for a while, not shoot this rifle for a long time, shoot a bunch of shit with MOA on it, then jump back on that rifle, forget it's calibrated in something totally different than all the rest of my rifles, and then screw up completely. I just calibrate everything in MOA, this way everything's the same, it makes my life a lot easier. Now for adjustment, let me pull this off there. The Trijicon, I can still adjust this behind the glass, kind of. I have to put my head off to the side. But even my parallax adjustment, it's really hidden by the scope ring right here. So I pretty much can't adjust behind the rifle. And that was the huge marketing point with the Leopold. Because of how all the marks are, you're supposed to be able to sit right behind the glass and adjust it. And I can do that. Like looking down the scope, just sliding my vision over a little bit, I can adjust my windage. I can see my parallax right behind the glass. I can see my elevation. So they did do a good job on that. Now with windage, it's kind of weird because if I'm not sitting behind the glass, like I'm coming over here trying to get like the most accurate thing, plus with the Allen wrench adjustment screws, which I can't stand, because you just set the cap on there and then you tighten down your 2 screws. I honestly don't like it. I prefer this style of adjustment. Yes, I got to move my head over to the side, but I feel like it feels more intuitive for me. Like I'll roll in a close-up picture, but like the windage, it's not in the center. It's on the top. And you have to be looking at it at this angle to get an accurate adjustment. With the Trijicon, it doesn't really matter what angle I'm looking at because of how the line goes straight to the number. I can get an accurate adjustment. So that is something to be concerned about. So, out of these 2 scoops, out of these 2 scopes, which one do I prefer? Now, when you're actually looking down the reticle, the Leupold is a lot fuller. There's a lot more going on there. They go every 2 MOA and show the adjustments. On the Trijicon, it's every 5 MOA, so there's a lot more wide open space. So they both do have their advantages. For example, say I was shooting the Leupold, and I took a shot, and it was a long range shot, and I got my reticle back on target, and then I see a splash in my scope. I will be within 2 MOA somewhere of that splash. So I can move that grid, put it back on target, and then take another shot. Or say I'm adjusting for windage and I don't have time to dial up. Like I just see a target, I'm like, holy crap. I already know the range. It's like, say, I'm making shit up here. 800 yards, well, 500 yards. I got a 5-mile-an-hour crosswind. My little Kestrel says to do this, so I just use my grid. I come down, I go over. I have a mark really close to where I need to be. The grid is very usable, but it does have its disadvantages. Say on the Trijicon, like I take a shot at range, there's a splash. I only have a dot within 5 MOA of where that splash is. So ideally, I would come back up and kind of guesstimate where I saw that splash on the scope and then shoot. I'll be within 5 MOA, but I mean 5 MOA is a huge, like that's a lot, especially at range. So making follow-up shots with the Leupold, you are more accurate. However, with the Trijicon, with the reticle being wide open and it being 5 MOA in between hashes, if I'm tracking a moving target, which doesn't make sense because you wouldn't do that at range, but say I'm using this for deer hunting, if I'm tracking a moving target, it would be a lot easier, plus doubled up with a semi-auto. With the wide open, like, that'll be burned in my brain, like, okay, so there was a splash, quick move up and shoot again. What am I trying to say here? For like a hunting scope or on a semi-automatic platform, I believe the Trijicon is the way to go. I believe this is better suited for the semi-automatic platform. It's shorter, the grid's a little bit more open, so it makes tracking moving targets easier. It goes all the way down to 4.5 zoom instead of 7, which allows you to use the advantages of a semi-automatic a little bit better. It is heavier though. You do have a lighted reticle. Now you can get the lighted reticle on the Leupold, but it gets like $500 more expensive. It was quite a bit to where I was like, I am not paying that much just to have my reticle light up. Lighted reticle right in the base price. Like, that's a part of the package. You don't have to buy a little bit extra. Where with the Leupold, I would have to buy a higher end scope. Lighted reticle comes in green and red. I believe this is ideal for the semi-automatic platform. Now, for an extreme long range or a target platform, ideally on a bolt gun, I believe this is the best tool for the job. You won't get lost in the turret, and if you're shooting at really long ranges, you're going to be adjusting a lot because the turret tells you where you are. You have the finer grid, so you're always within 2 MOA of a miss. Like, there's always some sort of scope reticle there. So you can readjust, and you have a pretty damn good idea of where exactly on your grid you hit. You have a higher end zoom. Yes, this only goes down to 7, but I mean, in this kind of bolt gun, do I really need to be shooting under 7 power? Probably not. When I get this thing dialed in, I'm not even going to pull the trigger on it unless I'm a minimum of 300 yards. So I will always be farther than 300 yards, so do I really need under 7 power? Probably not. The only time I'd even dial down, because I actually had this happen, is like, I shoot, I lose sight of the target, so then I throw it back down, find my target, then throw it right back up. So for finding the target, I can see why you'd want, 7 power, but 4.5, it just seems like kind of not really worth it on this type of scope with this type of rifle system. So out of these two scopes, which one is better? I believe that truly comes down to application. I believe they both bring enough to the table to where they both have enough advantages over each other to where it's a slice. If I want to go semi-auto, I'm going with the Trijicon. If I want to go like a long-range bolt gun, some sort of heavy caliber, like in this particular example, 300 PRC, where I'm not going to be shooting at close range, the advantages the Trijicon gives me are useless. So I would go with the Leopold. Putting the Leopold on a semi-auto doesn't make sense. The advantages the Leopold gives you over the Trijicon, I believe, are useless on a semi-auto. So depending on your application, I think for long-range bolt guns, without a doubt, Leopold Mark V HD. For some sort of DMR or gas gun, without a doubt, I would go the Trijicon 10 mile. My opinion there. But anyway, I appreciate you watching the video. If you like to help support the channel, got my Patreon right there, and I also have affiliate links in the description down below. Just by clicking on those links, even if you don't buy what that particular link is for, just clicking on that and then doing the Amazon shopping you were already going to do anyway, a little kickback for it because you came there off my channel. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.